Hello, I'm Daniel Huespe, and welcome to a very special presentation from the Vault, the making of the electric lights. I'm here with one of the Vault Hunters who has brought back one of his best albums, Kerry Badgley. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thank you very much.
It's been a day. Kerry, you're what, 69, 70 now?
Well,
34?
I've still got a few more years until I hit there, but...
Regardless, your album, The Electric Lights, is 10 years old.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Well, when you put it that way, it makes me feel old. No, it's crazy to think that 10 years can go by just like that. It's been a fun ride, and this album has definitely opened up a lot of really cool doors for me in music, which we'll get into later. But yeah, it's crazy to think that 10 years have gone by. It's gone by quick, but at the same time, there's been so much that's happened in 10 years.
So Electric Lights, because it's 10 years old, and you've had so much time, you're in your 70s now, what concept, how did the concept of Electric Lights come about?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there's kind of a cool story behind that one. So back in the winter of 2008, I was still working on my previous album, Pieces to Yesterday, at the time, and we had this wicked snowstorm here in Vancouver. I don't know if anybody remembers that who happens to be from Vancouver. My car did not move for 2 weeks.
I don't think anybody's car moved for 2 weeks.
But yeah, so one night I got this sudden inspiration to just take my camera and go for a walk, just because, you know, we don't get snow like this very often. I wanted to take some pictures. So I spent, 2 hours just walking all around the neighborhood, and I came upon this one, it's gonna sound crazy, but I came upon this one tree in somebody's front yard where they had these electric blue lights strung around the tree. And because it was covered in snow, all you see is these blue shimmering lights kind of poking through the snow, and I thought that was so cool. So I took pictures of it from all different angles, and I'm like, this has to mean something. This is inspirational, but I don't know why. So I got home, and I'm thinking, what is it about this tree that got my attention? Like, there's something romantic about it in the blue shining light. So I started writing all these ideas down on paper along with a little picture of the tree. And I literally wrote on the paper, Electric Lights Ideas, not knowing that would eventually become the song title or even a song at that point. And that's kind of how the whole thing started snowballing, pardon my pun.
So while you were building this snowman of an album, there are obviously other people that you collaborated with. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on some of the people that you did work with? Yeah,
so this was actually the first album where I actually had a team of people working with me face to face. Before that, I'm quite the introvert. I just stay alone in my room, working on my music, collaborating with people online. But this was the first time I actually got together and jammed with people and worked with people. So there was a lot of neat people. We had guitar player Kamil Krawczyk, who is outstanding. We had Frank Soda. We had Drew Timlin, who is one of my online collaborators, great songwriter, and I believe yourself as well.
Electric Lights. Why was it such an important album? You've had 10 other ones. Why is this one like above the rest?
Yeah, no, I've got 5 albums altogether, and that was number 4. And I would say it was definitely an important album in my life just because of what was going on at the time. There was a lot of really great things happening in my life at the time. There was a lot of not so great things that were going on as well. And also just the album itself, not only was it received very well, but it also opened many doors for me in music. So that's why I can't help but look back at Electric Lights and just think, wow, what a great time that was in my life to record that.
So you saw lights in the snow that reminded you of Electric Lights, but the song itself almost didn't make it onto the album.
That's right.
Why was that?
So basically, if anyone's heard my previous work before Electric Lights, I like to combine a lot of electronic stuff along with elements of rap and hip hop. I was heavily influenced by guys like Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park at the time, and so I wanted to be like Mike Shinoda. Originally, when I wrote Electric Lights, the song, it was supposed to be a rap song. And so I'm throwing all these ideas at it, I'm recording demos, I'm putting things together, and I'm like, no, this just isn't working, this is terrible. I'm like, I'm not feeling this song at all. So I sent a message to Drew Timlin, my co-writer, one night, and I said, I'm canceling this song. I'm like, I'm so frustrated, this is not doing anything for me, forget it. And he wrote back and he's like, what? It's like, you cannot cancel this song. This song has potential. So he actually worked with me on the song to revamp it, change it around, and make it what it is now. And in hindsight, I'm really glad we did that, because not only is it one of the most popular songs on the album, but we still play it to this day.
How did you meet, though? How did you meet Kamil Krawczyk? And what did it mean to work so closely with him on the album?
Kamil was a really great friend of mine. We actually met at the time. We were both working in fast food. We were both very silly people, so we naturally just kind of gravitated towards each other. I guess you could call us trolls. And so we started talking about music one day, and it turns out he's a guitar player. And I'm like, hey, I'm a songwriter. I'm like, let's collaborate. So we ended up getting together and we started jamming and writing ideas, coming up with stuff. And I'll tell you, some of the stuff that we did back then was just hilarious. Like when he'd come over to record, there were days when we'd spend 2 hours working on songs. There were days when we would get absolutely nothing done because we were just jamming and making jokes and
yeah! That's awesome! Keyboard solo! Hey!
man, I had never laughed as hard as those times working with Kamil, and I needed that at that time in my life, that kind of humor. And so when I think back to Electric Lights, not only do I think of the music, but I also think of the stories behind the music. And those days jamming with Kamil, I think that were some of my fondest memories of the whole recording process.
Do you ever think that you'll work with him down the road, if you got the opportunity to do so?
You know what? I would love to work with Kamil again. Kamil is a very studious guy. I know at the time he was taking some very high-level courses at UBC, as well as universities, I think, in Ontario and over in Europe as well. So unfortunately our lives after that recording kind of just went in separate directions, and we kind of lost touch. But he is definitely somebody, if the opportunity ever came up, I would love to jam with him again and write some new material, for sure.
So you talked about some trials and tribulations while you were even recording the album with Kamil. What other difficult periods were you going through while recording this album?
So at the time we were recording the album, I was quite unhappy with my employment situation. I was kind of done flipping burgers, if you will, and I wanted to do bigger and better things. And also at the time, my parents were splitting up, and I was about that age where I needed to move out on my own in the great big world. And to be honest, I didn't know what to expect or what to even really do with myself at the time. So moving out on my own while still working in fast food, that was pretty terrifying. And I didn't know if I'd be able to make ends meet, just being honest. So I didn't know at that time if I'd be able to finish Electric Lights. So that was a pretty stressful situation for me. But not only was I able to finish it, but things actually worked out for the best, and it ended up opening lots of really cool doors for me. And there was also one other challenge that I faced at the time, and that was what people generally call writer's block. So basically that's when you're just kind of writing for the sake of writing and not really what you're wanting to write. I actually came up with my own term for it. I prefer to call it a momentary lack of inspiration as opposed to writer's block, because if you're a writer, you're a writer, and that's not going to go away. You need to be inspired if you want to write good songs. And so that was the first time, I guess, with all the other challenges going on, that I really experienced that momentary lack of inspiration. But I was able to overcome it.
Is there any particular song on the album that you like above the rest, that meant something to your heart?
Wow, that's a tough question. Well, you know what? I'm going to sort of come out of left field then, and I'm going to pick Mutual Desires. That was a really fun song to work on. Kamil put down some really cool guitar parts on that one, and there's a lot of really neat synthesizer stuff in there. And also there's a cool story behind that song. At the time that I wrote that song, Lady Gaga had just released the song Just Dance. I don't know if that was her first radio song, but it was definitely one of her biggest songs at the time that kind of launched her into where she was, yeah. And I didn't want to copy that song, but I wanted to make a song like that had the same energy, the same vibe. So I put my mind to work and came up with Mutual Desires, which is kind of a pop, dancey kind of song. And if you notice, there's one line in the song that goes, now close your eyes, just dance till you're feeling fine, which is actually borrowed right out of the title of Lady Gaga's song.
Maybe an Easter egg before Easter eggs were even a thing.
Oh, come on, the album's not that old.
It could have been. So speaking of songs, you have one that you love above the rest. But speaking of burning up, I understand that some parts of it were recorded at UBC, which is University of British Columbia, if you're familiar with the Lower Mainland, out in the West End. How did that happen?
No, that was actually funny, especially as somebody who didn't go to university myself. It was really neat to be able to actually, sort of get an all-access pass to the school and get to, walk around, check out the different buildings, the library, some of the architecture. It's just incredible.
I bet that's all he checked out.
So how that actually came about, like I mentioned earlier, Kamil, my guitar player, he was a very studious guy. He was taking some high-level courses at UBC at the time. And unfortunately, the deadline to get the songs done was coming up, and he just did not have the time to come from UBC out to Surrey to record. So in an effort to move it along, I actually packed up my whole recording setup, which at the time would have been a giant PC tower, a brick monitor, a soundboard, guitars, keyboards, everything, and I drove it all out in my little Cavalier down to West Van. Yeah, we set up in a dorm room and nearly got kicked out a couple times. And we were having a great time.
How did you not, what made them not kick you out?
That actually almost happened a couple times. We made friends with the hall cop. Yeah, is that what you call them? And,
the hall cop.
I don't know what you call those guys, but yeah, they walk around.
The hall monitors?
Hall monitors, yeah, they patrol the place. But no, we brought them in and we played them a couple songs, and no, it was all cool.
Camille, come here, Camille. Camille, come here,
What would be some of your favorite songs to perform from the album Electric Lights?
So some of my favorite songs to perform from Electric Lights, well, there's a few of them that we still sort of play whenever we get the chance. No, some of my favorites to play are definitely Far Away. Everybody loves Far Away. That's a real high energy song, gets people, gets a mosh pit going. Electric Lights, of course, the title track, everybody likes that one. And yeah, I talked about Mutual Desires earlier. I don't play that one very often, but especially the last little while, I've been remastering the songs for the anniversary edition. And I'm listening back to that one, and I'm like, why don't I play that one more often? That's a fun song. So I think when the gigs come back, I'd like to maybe add that song, Mutual Desires, back into the set list. My Untold Story, that's always a nice one to play as well, a nice slower one. And I believe your vocals are even in that one at the beginning as a sample.
Is it?
It is.
Hot damn. Speaking of My Untold Story, the tune to that song is very pretty. It's very fun to listen to.
Oh, thank you.
Is there a story behind this?
Yeah, there is, and it's a pretty wild story. So as some of you who might know me know, I have always been a bit of an insomniac. Thankfully not so much anymore, but back in the writing days for Electric Lights, it was pretty bad. I would go days sometimes without sleeping. And one of the consequences of not sleeping is you don't dream very often. So like if I dream, it's a monumentous occasion. Mm-hmm. But this one night, I'll never forget this. I was in this dream, and the dream felt so realistic. I didn't know where I was, but I was standing, it almost, pardon my pun, it almost sounded like the American dream. Like I was standing in front of this beautiful, like well-landscaped house with a white picket fence, and and I was just standing there by myself, and this tune was playing in the background, and I could hear the tune vividly. And then I woke up, and I had no idea what just happened. I don't know what that dream meant, but I could still hear the tune in my head, and I didn't want to forget it. So the first thing I did was I got up, literally got up out of bed, walked over to my piano, hit record, and just played the tune to the best of my memory, how I could remember it. Well, I must have spent like 2 weeks racking my brain trying to think, where have I heard this song before? Because if it was in my dream, I must have heard it somewhere. I could not for the life of me figure it out. So I sent it to Drew, we worked on it, and we came up with the orchestra piece, and that's how that tune came about, and we developed the song from there into, I personally think it's one of the more beautiful songs on the album.
On this album, you got to work with Frank Soda, who is a very accomplished Canadian rock artist in his own right. How did that come about, and what was it like to work with him?
Yeah, so working with Frank was a lot of fun. It's actually funny, I went to school with Frank's son, Umberto. And so there were many times growing up when I was just a little kid, would go hang out at his house and would sit there in the garage and watch Frank and his band rehearse for their tours. Because, I mean, he used to go on tour all across Canada with his band, Frank Soda and the Imps, as well as Thor. And so I think that was a lot of inspiration right there, just as a kid, watching these guys rehearse with these loud amps. You got to plug your ears, it's so loud. And I'm just thinking, wow, I want to do that one day. Working with Frank on Electric Lights, it was quite a cool experience. And at the time, I didn't think I would ever get to work with him, and I'm glad I did, because he kind of took me under his wing, and we've worked on a lot of projects since then.
You guys recorded a song called In Outer Space, which is pretty epic in of itself. What was it like working on a song with Frank Soda?
Yeah, so In Outer Space, that song was actually inspired, at the time I was just getting into a band called Muse. And I don't know if you're familiar with Muse, but a lot of their stuff, it's very symphonic, it's very progressive rock. It's not unlike them to have a 7-minute long song which changes from, a soft piece to something really heavy. And I'm like, you know what, I want to make something like that. So I sat down with the best of my abilities with my, momentary lapse of inspiration going on there, but I came up with this song, In Outer Space, and there was this piece in the middle where a big guitar solo would work really well, and I knew I wanted to put something in there, and so I had this idea one day, and I'm like, you know what, it wouldn't hurt to ask. So I went on Facebook Messenger, I think it was a brand new service at the time, and I found Frank, and I messaged him, and I said, hey Frank, I hope you're doing well. I'm writing a song, and I'm wondering what are the odds you might want to help me out with the song. He responded like within an hour and said, when and where?
Today is an exciting day for Electric Lights. I get to record with Frank Soda.
So that was a pretty exciting moment, and there's actually a funny story behind the actual recording of that solo. So he came over and set up his stuff. I'm just kind of sitting at the back, in awe, just watching him do his stuff, tune up his guitar. This is the first time I'd ever worked with someone as high profile as him, so I'm just kind of staying out of the way. And so he wanted to hear the song, so I'm like, okay. So I'd play him the song. So he's sitting there with his guitar, and he's just strumming a couple chords. And he's like, okay, I'm ready to record. And in my head, I'm thinking, really? Like, you just listen to it once and you're good to go? So I'm like, okay. So I hit record, and he did this. And my jaw literally hit the floor. I was like, holy shit. And that was when I truly realized that Frank Soda is indeed one of Canada's best guitar players. Because man, what a guitar player he is.
So we gave a little bit of backstories on Frank. However, I want to go back to 2019.
Okay.
That was pre-COVID. So you released a single, which was a remake of your title track, the track that almost didn't make it on the album, Electric Lights. However, you called it Electric Lights Recharged. How did that come about?
Yeah, so in the winter of 2016, right after I released my most recent album, The Infinity Machine, I actually got the chance to open for Faber Drive at the Hard Rock Theatre, which was insane. I never, at the time I was writing Electric Lights, I never imagined I would be on stage 4 months after Michael Bublé played there, opening for a band that I grew up loving, Faber Drive. And so we really worked on Electric Lights, the song, to perform at this gig. And Frank came up with a really cool guitar part to make it nice and heavy. And we had a bass player as well named Laurie Rugg, and he came up with a wicked bass line for the song. And we had talked about possibly re-recording the song after that show because I just liked the new feel of it. Like, I didn't want to replace the original, but it was this really neat kind of rock version of the song, and I really wanted to do something with that. Now, unfortunately, Laurie, about a year after the show, he passed away. So I did not get to have him on the recording, but I decided in his honor I still want to finish what we had started. So we recorded the rock version with a lot of really talented instrumentalists and yeah, put it out called Electric Lights Recharged, the Recharged Mix.
Kerry, I want to say it's been an absolute blast. It's been an absolute blast to discuss and go down memory lane and hear all these fantastic stories. The album is 10 years. Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time, musically?
Wow, that's a good question. It's been a challenge during COVID to sort of keep myself going, but I have been staying busy, celebrating these anniversaries and doing some remasters. But once this is done, I'd kind of like to start writing again and kind of see where that takes me. I've got a lot of cool ideas I've already started. Frank really likes them, so I think that's what's going to happen after this. We might go back in the studio and record some more songs, play some more gigs.
Sounds good. Again, thank you. Guys, this has been Kerry Badgley. This is From the Vault. It's been a special presentation, the Electric Lights, the making of. Anyways, thank you again, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, he's saying we're fine.
Unless there's anything you can think of.
So that's a wrap. He said it's fine.